You're going to hate me for saying this. So we've talked about Tampa Bay, and I told you that I was very impressed when they were playing Boston. I don't have them in my top 10 in my power rankings.
Top 10, not even.
I have them
Whoa.
sitting at number 11. Mind you, my power rankings are more analytical than they are gut feeling, and a lot of it has to do with what they did at the end of last season. So it's about what have you done for me lately? What do I see your club doing, and how strong is it going forward? I have them sitting at number 11.
I would hope you have Milwaukee at least in the top five.
Oh, Milwaukee, yeah. Oh, top five? Milwaukee, I have at number 7.
I definitely think I'm kind of shocked. And I'm not trying to put any bias into this, but I'm kind of shocked looking at what Milwaukee did to San Diego this weekend, especially taking 3 out of 4. Tampa Bay, even though you don't like them, still
I don't
undefeated on
I don't
American
hate
soil.
I don't hate Tampa, but here's the thing. They started in my bottom 10 this year going into the season. So they're not going to make a huge leap after just 2.5 weeks of play. Each team has their own weakness in the first few weeks. I try to feel it out. Usually after the first month, I get a pretty good read on it. Right now, I know it's really controversial, but again, after the first month, last season won't matter at all. It'll just be about this season. So in a couple weeks, we'll see where I'm at on that. We've reached our 18th episode. Thank you guys for joining us today. Welcome into the show. Jordan right here with you as always. And for the 6th consecutive week in a row, we have Jesse Larson on the show. Jesse, you trying to make a habit of this?
Hey man, I'm always down to host. Talking sports, it's our jam. So let's do this.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and kick things off on a very refreshing note. Jalen Hurts got a new contract with the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles did something right here. 5 years, $255 million. $179 million of that is guaranteed right away.
Me as a regular person, just thinking about that kind of money, it's just unfathomable to me, to be honest with you.
Hey, same. I've got maybe $100 in my wallet.
Same.
I can't imagine that kind of money. Can't fathom it. But just comparing it to some of these other contracts that we've seen, I feel like this is an appropriate amount of money for him. I feel like he's by far the best quarterback in the NFC, and I feel like he absolutely deserved this kind of contract. There were rumors and talks that he might not get the bag, even though he had this tremendous season this year. Look, I understand that people have their reservations with this guy. People are going to have their reservations with every quarterback in the league. There's always some type of injury, playing style, coaching style that people are going to bring up and say, hey, maybe this is the reason for that. This is the reason for that. You shouldn't guarantee this much for that guy. I think Jalen went out this year and he proved that he is worth exactly this amount of money and that he earned every penny of it. And on top of that, I'm very happy for his agent, Nicole Lynn. She's the president of football for Clutch Sports Group. She's young. She's 34 years old, and she secured this contract for him. She brokered what is, as of this moment, the largest per-year deal in NFL history, Jesse.
Pretty cool too. Big ups for especially women in representation for agencies. As far as I can remember, it's been a male dominated effort, and that's pretty cool to see. I'm not gonna lie, that's epic. And I love the way Jalen has gone about this. He doesn't shy away from bringing Nicole into the fray and getting her props, and do deserved for sure.
As we see this NFC East dynamic, now that Jalen Hurts is locked up, I do have to maybe bring it down a notch and say, well, now I look at the Eagles on offense. They're pretty secure, but we change it over to defense. Jesse, they've lost a lot of pieces on the defense this year in the offseason. I don't think the NFC East is going to be very strong going forward. It's a winnable division again for them, but they're not going to be this dominant team. I don't think they're going to go to the Super Bowl this year. I think it's going to take them a while to readjust some of their defensive pieces. What do you say?
Yeah, I think the NFC East is definitely not, it's not the strongest division in the league by any stretch, but I think Philadelphia will have the competition though, because and as much as everyone wants to hate on Dallas, Dallas is not a bad team. You know, put the pieces that they have, and I love the hate between Philadelphia and Dallas. So I definitely think those games specifically are going to be toss ups regardless. Anyone can win those. And then don't forget that the Giants also went to the playoffs last year. So the competition is there, and Philadelphia, as you mentioned, losing those pieces on defense, it'll take them down a little bit of a notch. And while I still think they do win the division personally at this juncture, I know this is way too early to predict what happens in 23, 24, but I still think they're the favorites to win the NFC East. But I think it'll be very, very tight.
One reason I do like this contract for Philly is because while at the moment it is the largest deal in NFL history on a per year basis, I think that's going to change with a few different players as soon as this offseason. We've got, obviously, the Lamar Jackson situation. He's going to get a contract somewhere. I don't know if it's going to happen this offseason. Like you brought up, there's a chance he could not play this year, which is becoming a little bit more fathomable by the day. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see what happens on draft day. I think a lot of dominoes are going to fall at that time, including him and including Aaron Rodgers as well. But it's going to happen whether this season or next season. Joe Burrow, if Jalen Hurts got this contract, imagine what Joe Burrow's going to get.
Cincinnati does not have, I don't think they have the holdbacks that Philadelphia may have with, delivering a contract like that. So I could definitely see someone like Joe Burrow really getting paid this season.
He's going to be somewhere in the echelon of where Patrick Mahomes was percentage-wise when he got his contract. I would say maybe not exactly where Mahomes is. Doesn't have the ring to back it up. Go Rams. But he's proven that he is going to have what many would consider to be, as long as he stays healthy, he's going to have this Aaron Rodgers type of career, this legendary type of career, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning even. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that that'll happen, and I think that a lot of people are kind of predicting that that's where it's going to go. We've been talking Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes for the longest time, and no disrespect to Josh Allen at all, but I think Joe Burrow has to be put in the conversation, possibly even ahead of Josh Allen right now, just because of how he's beaten these big teams time and time again.
Well, I think Josh Allen has proven that he hasn't been able to win that game, beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, beat Joe Burrow in the playoffs. He hasn't been able to do that yet. Joe Burrow has proved that he can win those games. Maybe not the bowl itself. He hasn't gotten a Lombardi trophy, but, in even short spans of a career for both Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, I definitely put my bias aside and I say Joe Burrow looks, at least postseason wise, he's the better quarterback.
One guy that I do want to talk about as well that is kind of getting overlooked right now, if you can even say that about him, is Justin Herbert of the LA Chargers. Justin Herbert's a stud, man. He's in the same division as Patrick Mahomes, and I think that works to a disadvantage as far as total media coverage goes. But Justin Herbert is a top 5 talent in this league. He's going to be a top 5 talent for at least the next 5 years, probably the next 10 years, if I'm being 100% honest. This guy just got, like I said, he got Kellen Moore. He's going to help his offense out so much. I think a lot of what held Justin Herbert back last year, because the Chargers are a good football team, a lot of what held him back last year was the coaching. And I don't think a ton of that is his fault. The number 2 thing that held him back, obviously, was the health of the receivers. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen could not stay healthy at the same time, and that's kind of been the theme of this team for the last couple years now. But Justin Herbert is the kind of talent where he's going to get paid a lot of money, but I think they need to re-sign Austin Eckler, first of all. I think they need to take care of him because he's trying to get out. So they need to make sure they lock him up.
Yeah, and I think, and I don't want to take away anything from what Herbert has done in LA, but I think Austin Eckler really is the centerpiece for that offense. Personally, that's just my opinion. But yeah, I wonder too, Jordan, kind of as a California resident, Do you think that the dual media market that, with the Rams and Chargers, how do you think that really has affected Herbert's rise to stardom or his potential coverage? Even though LA is the second biggest TV market in the country, I wonder if that is kind of diluted a little bit because there's so many teams vying in that area.
Well, here's the thing: LA can definitely hold two NFL teams and do just fine as far as a media share goes. I don't live in LA. I do visit LA maybe every few months or so, just for things I need to do here and there that you don't quite get to do in this little cow town that I live in. So I'm in LA pretty frequently. And from what I see there, the media share between the Rams and Chargers is pretty fair across the board. You think of NFL Network, their headquarters is right outside of SoFi Stadium, where both of these teams play. Um, but the media coverage that I see when I do go to LA, it's pretty fair. The only thing is, we know this about LA, and you've been to LA. You know how the experience goes there. There's so much to do there. There's so many different things. Sports is definitely very secondary to all of the stuff that happens there. It's Tinseltown, that's what it's all about in Los Angeles. Although I will say, if you go on these championship runs for long periods of time, like the Lakers have, like the Dodgers have, that's why those are darlings to the city, and that's why all the celebrities show up to those games. I think one championship for the Rams put them ahead of the Chargers in that category, but the Clippers are always little brother to the Lakers. The Angels, a lot of people love the Angels.
I get what you're saying. The Dodgers, the Lakers, that's your pinnacle of professional sports. Mm-hmm. And then even I think just the share of media coverage that UCLA and USC get even kind of dilutes the atmosphere for the Chargers. So I think kind of going back to what we were talking about, I wonder if Justin Herbert really has gotten as exposed as you think he probably deserves, because like you said, he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL and he's got a great offense behind him. He just doesn't have the coaching. But now with Kellen Moore in the fold, I think the Chargers are going to take a step forward, provided they can lock up Austin Eckler, which I think is still iffy.
One other thing I do want to say real quick about baseball, kind of to the point of something that we had mentioned last week. It didn't make the show, but it did make the Deep Cut Friday on social media when we were talking about, and I think you're the one that brought it up actually, what the Brewers are doing, the selling alcohol after the 7th inning. Mm-hmm. So Phillies pitcher Matt Strom came out, and here's a quote from him of what he said. He said, "The reason we stopped in the 7th before was to give our fans time to sober up and drive home safe. So now with a faster paced game, would we not move the beer sales back to the 6th inning to give our fans time to sober up and drive home?" And I think that's a decent point. I disagree with him, but I think it's a good point. He's bringing up safety, and obviously that's the number one priority. That's why MLB does things like extend the nets further down the line, things like cutting people off after the 7th inning. But here's what I'll say to that. There's always a right answer for everything, and then there's a real answer for everything. The right answer would be, yes, make sure they have time to sober up. Does anyone actually think to themselves, okay, I have 22 minutes left to sober up. I have to make sure I'm not drinking, get enough water and food in me so that I'm sober and I can drive home. You've been drinking all day. I would hope that you have another plan than to just get in your car and drive home anyways, even with a 22-minute span. That's not how it works in real life. I mean, we've both been there. We know how it is. You don't sober up after 22 minutes. You don't sober up after 30 minutes. You don't sober up after an hour. You're not just magically good to drive home. You have to have a plan in place going into it. So I think it's fine. I think that the amount of time they're getting to drink is about the same anyways. And it's not like they're going to be chugging beers faster. Maybe a couple people, but you're going to be drinking the same amount for the most part from top to bottom. I don't know.
Yeah. To me, it's kind of an interesting dynamic, because I think, you might look at it, the teams, the owners are, they're trying to get a little more money, try to make up a little bit for that concession side. When it comes to the safety aspect, though, like you said, you should already have a plan in place for how you're going to get home if you're going to plan on drinking during a game. Um, but to that point too, I found out just the other day, Milwaukee's, they may have been the starter, but now there's like 6 or 7 teams that have decided to do the same thing as Milwaukee.
Yeah, a lot of people are adapting that idea because how else do you make up your ground? Um, I get where he's coming from. It is definitely a valid point, a solid point. We all care about the safety of the fans and getting home safe. Nobody wants to go to a game just to have a good time and then they don't come home, you know,
Mhm.
or they cause an accident and then it alters their life forever.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. So I get where he's coming from on that. But the reality of it is that's not how sobriety works. That's not how drinking and getting buzzed and getting drunk works. Call me crazy, but I don't think that that's going to stop anybody from getting home in a different manner than how they had already previously planned. I think it's pretty apparent at this point that the play-in is here to stay. We saw 6 games in this play-in tournament that absolutely blew us out of the water. The competition between these 7, 8, 9, and 10 seeds in the first round is usually not very good. Just to be completely honest, sometimes there are some great upsets, and that's perfectly fine. We saw the Lakers beat the Grizzlies in game 1 already in a 2-7 matchup. We saw the Heat beat the Bucks in a 1-8 matchup. But this play-in tournament, we saw some of the best games we've seen all season. We saw an overtime thriller between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the LA Lakers to claim that 7 seed, where at the very end of the game, Schroeder hits that 3, shows the ice in his veins, and then Anthony Davis fouls Mike Conley with 0.1 seconds left to give him 3 free throws at the line to send it into overtime. That was one of the better games that I've ever seen, not even just this year, but in any sort of playoff fashion. We saw the game with the Chicago Bulls and the Toronto Raptors where DeAr DeRozan, the daughter of DeMar DeRozan, was just absolutely stole the show. I don't know if you saw that, Jesse, but where she was just screaming at the top of her lungs for every free throw that the Toronto Raptors did. And the great thing is that worked. They shot 50% from the line and lost the game because they couldn't hit a decent average of those free throws. She helped the Chicago Bulls win that game. The other game that really stands out in my mind was watching, and this is strictly from a basketball standpoint too, the Oklahoma City Thunder. They stormed back versus the Pelicans a couple of times. It was a back and forth battle for a while. This OKC team, their average age is under the age of 23. They have a very bright future. They have about 10 first-round draft picks over the course of the next 5 years. There's no limit to what this team can do. They get Chet Holmgren back next year. This is the beginning of big things for them. And I look at a team like the Pelicans. What if they had Zion in? What if Zion, and I don't want to ever put anybody's mental health secondary. He said he wasn't feeling like himself, so that's why he couldn't play. Not physically, but mentally. He wasn't feeling like himself. And that's fine. But Zion is not playing enough games for the Pelicans, just flat out over the course of those 4 years. He has played in about as many games as LeBron did for the Lakers over the last 2 years. Mind you, LeBron's been out with injury both of those years. So the Pelicans are in a real dilemma here. They need Zion to be viable for them to be able to continue this pace that they are going at moving forward. They have good pieces on that team. They have CJ McCollum. They have Brandon Ingram. They have good pieces. I just need to see them move forward a little bit, or I just need to see more out of Zion than what I'm seeing from him so far. Now, to the actual playoffs. Looking at this round one, just in the couple days that we've had with it, I want to take a look at the Miami and Milwaukee series. Obviously, Giannis goes down early in that game. Giannis misses the rest of the game with back contusions, is what they're calling it. The Heat took advantage of a golden opportunity because if Giannis is in there, they're not winning this game. If Giannis is fully healthy throughout this series, they're getting swept. That's the reality of the situation. The Heat went up 1-0 in this series. The Heat have a chance to put the Bucks in an 0-2 hole at home if Giannis can't make this next game back. And if they do that, the Heat will play 3 of their next 4 games in Miami, and we could potentially see an 8-1 upset. Now, as far as the Clippers and Suns series goes, I think a lot of us are a little surprised at what's going on there. We expected a lot out of Kevin Durant since they started 8-0 since he came back from that injury. They lost game 1 to the Clippers. And we got to remember, the Clippers still have the cloth. They still have one of the best players in the league, one of the best players of all time in all reality, with Kawhi Leonard. He's going to challenge you. They got a lot of good pieces in there. Russell Westbrook obviously stepped up when he needed to at the last second to help his team get the win. This team has been put together so fast and so quickly. Yeah, you have great pieces. You have Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. You have DeAndre Ayton. You have Chris Paul, even though it's not the version of Chris Paul that we're all used to. But this is a team that should handily win this series just looking at it on paper. So I need to see a little bit more cohesiveness from them. I need to see Kevin Durant making more shots, making more attempts, getting the ball a little bit more. He's the best player on your team. Give him the ball. Now, the big series I want to talk about right now, the Kings. The Sacramento Kings are up on the Golden State Warriors 2-0 in this series. Last night's game, well, okay, so you're going to watch this on Wednesday. The game on Monday night, if you didn't see this, you missed out on one of the craziest games I've seen in a while. This felt like an old school brawl. It was very, very physical, which I said last week it was going to be. In the fourth quarter, Sabonis is on his back, grabs Draymond Green's leg as he's running by. Draymond Green, after he feels his leg get grabbed, jumps in the air, stomps on the rib cage of Domantas Sabonis. You look back at the tape, it's not an accidental step. It is intentional. There is a windup. There is a pressing down with full force before Draymond jumps off of him and moves on with the play. The correct call on the court, called correctly by the officials, was a flagrant 2 for Draymond and a flagrant 1 for Domantas Sabonis, because that was not a basketball move. It was not necessary. He grabbed his leg. So yes, flagrant 1 is the right call for Domantas Sabonis. Flagrant 2 is the right call for Draymond Green. Draymond was subsequently ejected. So there's multiple layers to this thing. For Draymond Green, this is not out of character for him. This is something that we've seen happen over and over again, going back to even the beginning of the season when he punched a teammate in the face in practice. I don't like to use the word dirty for a lot of players. In fact, I think sometimes this can be a good thing. We saw how he was getting high fives from all of his teammates and hyping everybody up, and he was getting into it with the crowd afterwards. I think that, to be honest, the Warriors can use this going forward as a rallying cry. Now they're down 0-2 in the series. They can rally around this moment with Draymond. They can get it together at Chase Center in San Francisco, and they can win a few games in the series and possibly even come back and win the series. But here's the real issue I have with it. That could be detrimental not only to somebody's health, but to somebody's career to step down on their ribcage with full force. And I know it's kind of an in-the-moment thing, but dude, you got to learn to control your emotions. I get that you're at the highest level of play. I get that you are a very passionate person. I get that you're a very physical person. The game calls for physicality, and that's fine. You got to be smarter than that. Yeah, this is who you are. Yeah, your teammates are going to stand up for you. Obviously, you're part of a team. You're part of a collective, and you guys are going to use this moment as a rallying cry. But you're in the fourth quarter of a game that you need on the road. Your team flat out sucks on the road. Let's call it what it is. This team is terrible on the road. You have to get one of these games. You can't come out of this part 0-2. You have to stay in there for your team. You know when you do this kind of thing that you're going to get ejected. And after he got ejected, the Warriors came close. They came within tying this game, and they end up losing by a pretty significant amount. You got to think before you do things like this, man. I don't know what was going through your head. Probably nothing. Probably just the emotion and the fast-paced part of this. You didn't have time to think of it. But if that's your first reaction, you need to work on that.
I don't want to throw you off, Jordan, but breaking news out of Buffalo, New York. The medical examiners at First Niagara Hospital in Buffalo have announced that Damar Hamlin has been officially cleared to resume football activities.
Yes.
Man, what more can you say? It's just so awesome to hear. I personally, when it happened, I was like, his career's over. Just, it's done. They're not going to let him near a football field. Is a liability. Bills will pay out his contract, which they did. So now he's got to get re-signed to a contract. But man, it's just something positive that came out of that now.
And I think the whole world is happy to hear that.
For sure.
Everybody was pulling for Damar Hamlin, and now that he's been medically cleared to play, nothing short of a miracle for sure. It's amazing news to hear. I'm so happy. Yeah, from the contract side of things, it's definitely going to be a little strange. But I do think Buffalo was bringing him into the fold to be a starter anyways. I know he was in there as a secondary guy, kind of to take some reps, but also because of injury, he was thrown into the starter role. Can't wait. Just the only time I'll be rooting against him is when the Bills play the Rams. But outside of that, that's a tough guy not to root for. You know, solid guy all the way across the board. A lot of charity work that he does. So,
yep,
love to hear it, man. Love to hear it. Love to see it.
Anyway, Jordan, now I want to talk about some NHL playoffs. You did the wrap on the NBA. Big time spring playoffs for pro sports. NHL, NBA kind of go hand in hand. So I like the NHL. You like the NBA. I am really excited for this first night of NHL playoffs that we had last night. Monday night, I should say.
2 overtime games.
2 overtime games plus a double overtime in Dallas. So Minnesota taking that one 3-2. Ryan Hartman with a wrister to finish it in double OT for Minnesota. Kings and Oilers. That was a physical game. I didn't get to stay up and watch the entire one, so I didn't see the Kings finish it off there at the end. But then the first game, I did watch the Hurricanes and the Islanders 2-1. That game went down to the wire as well. Not so much down to the wire. The Hurricanes led 2-1 the entire way of the third period, but New York had their chances. I will say that. Speaking of New York, Jordan, I don't know if you know this, but it is the first time since 1994 that the Rangers, Islanders, Devils, Knicks, and Nets are going to the playoffs in the same year. All 5 of the New York City metro area hockey and basketball teams are in the postseason. And I know you know the backstory of like how the Knicks have been in the past 30 years. So it's a big thing for these 5 to be in the postseason at the same time because, you know, the last several years, they have not all been high quality playoff contenders for sure.
Imagine trying to plan your schedule around all of this happening. So many activities. So much going on.
We were just talking about Los Angeles. Well, New York City is the only TV market that's bigger than Los Angeles. So the epicenter of pro sports, if you will. But then also watched a little bit of the Bruins and the Panthers, the first round matchup there. We've been talking about the Bruins a lot on the show lately. And they didn't even have Patrice Bergeron in the lineup. He was not well. And they still came away with a 3-1 win. Linus Allmark was phenomenal in net. And I just, as we talked about last week, Jordan, just there's nothing in my mind that says, especially after the way Boston played last night, that they're not going to sweep Florida and go on to the next round.
You're telling me that the Bruins won a game? What?
Yeah, it was. It got a little contentious in there in the middle of the second period, but
I saw somebody's stick got taken away.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a heated roll.
A little chippy, yeah.
Yeah, a little chippy, but kind of like the Kings and Oilers, physical but fair at the same time. I didn't think it was overly aggressive. But another piece to this series here, Boston is the President's Cup winner this year. Florida was the President's Cup winner last year. It's the first time that since the award, the President's Trophy was awarded in 1985, it's the first time ever that the last year and the current year's President's Trophy winners are meeting in the playoffs.
I was up pretty late last night. Obviously, I was watching a lot of basketball. Like you said, NHL is not my forte, although I do like hockey. But I was up. I was watching the Minnesota Dallas game. I'm a little invested, not to bring any bias into it. I'm a little invested in Minnesota just because I was there like a month ago. So here's the thing. I don't claim any NHL team. I didn't grow up on it. I have yet to go to an actual physical NHL game. And I've said this for years. When somebody takes me to an NHL game, that team will be the team that I follow. So I'm still waiting on someone to take me. So you want me to root for your team? Take me to the game. But
as long as it's not Vegas, Jordan, we're good. We're good.
No, someone can take me to Vegas. It's fine. That's fine. So, but yeah, just because I was there and everybody there is all about the Wild right now. I did stay up to watch that game. I was like, all right, this game's going to end soon, right? It's going to end soon, right? And I saw the Kings and Oilers game go into overtime when Minnesota Dallas was coming to the end of the first overtime. I was like, okay, so that's going into overtime. That's fine. I'll be able to finish this game and then I'll watch the next one. Before double OT, the LA Edmonton game ended, and I was like, damn, like I didn't even get to watch any of that one. But double overtime, definitely worth it. That was a really cool way to end that game. Man, it was. I know hockey's a physical sport, but that game was one of the more physical hockey games I ever watched. I didn't get to bed until after 11 p.m. Jesse, I'm an old man. That's late for me now. So, yeah, I loved what I've seen so far. Again, we've only had one day. By the time this episode comes out, there will be 2 days. The first game of round one will be over for every team. But you love to see it, especially going back to your point, the whole New York metro area thing where you have 5 teams. This is great for the sport of hockey. This is great for the sport of basketball. Some of the biggest markets having some of the biggest teams in there. The ratings for both the NHL playoffs and the NBA playoffs were on the rise anyways. This is only going to add to it. Love to see as much sports coverage as possible. I don't know too much about the NHL teams, how good any of them are doing. I do know in basketball, I don't expect the Nets to go anywhere this year, but I think the Knicks are going to make some noise. I think they have the edge over the Cavaliers, and I do see them going to at least round 2 to play what looks like the Bucks, but hey, from what we've seen so far, could be the Heat. Well, that's all the time we have for this week, folks. Tune in next week as we go over more of the NBA playoffs, more of the NHL playoffs, and more sports in general. Will the Tampa Bay Rays make it into my top 10 next week? Probably. Most likely. But you'll have to tune in to find out. So thanks for joining us this week. From Jesse Larson in Oklahoma to Jordan Wright in Cowtown, California. Peace out, y'all. See you next time.
Peace out.